Okay, so Revo Fitness are on board with the Pies Nation podcast. And look, I'll be honest, when I heard it was $9.69 a week, I had some questions, particularly with no lock-in contracts, but there's no catch. Full gym, everything you need, free weights, pin and plate, cardio, functional training, and it's open 24/7 with no dodgy fine print. Who's a Collingwood player that would be an absolute gym nut at Revo that would always be there 24/7?
Well, I think it's Billy Frampton, Nico. Obviously, a lot of noise out of the club that he's the bench press king, so I think he'd been there a fair bit.
Now, for $3 more a week, you can get unlimited Pilates, massage chairs, and the eVolt body scans thrown in, which I definitely need to look into. But Pilates, massage chairs, anyone ring a bell from the Collingwood Footy Club that might utilise some of that?
I think you might find Geordie to go in a massage chair, Nico. Just taking things easy, 24/7, enjoying life.
Clubs are already all over Australia, so chances are there's one near you. Check it out at revofitness.com.au or sign up in Club Revo Fitness. Genuinely good value. I wouldn't lie to you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. My name is Nicholas Sacco, your host once again. This is episode 12 of season 8, or episode 213 if you are counting from the beginning, and it was a horror night at the MCG. We fell to Geelong by 54 points on Saturday, and whilst there will be some cause for celebration over the next fortnight, it doesn't hide some of the concerns the club may be facing in the non-too-distant future. Today, we unpack the disappointment of Saturday night and why it went the way it did. The fans will have their say, as they always do, thanks to SpeakPie. And Serge will tell us why it was a similar result for the Pies against the Cats in our VFL Wrap. And as I welcome Marcus Callahan and Jack Dugan to the Backchat studios, all we've been talking about for the last half an hour is how crazy things can change in a week of football. We were so impressed by our effort against the Hawks, a team that we expect to be right at the point of the year. And we have all the confidence in the world heading into a Geelong game where the opposition weren't travelling too great themselves. And then by 10 o'clock on Saturday night, those thoughts are completely flipped, and now we start to question where we are in the pack again.
We do. Good to be with you, gentlemen. Looking forward to this one despite a dismal performance by the Pies on Saturday night. Could not get the job done, out-coached, outplayed, all of the other things that you could use to describe a side that was better in the box and better on the ground, Jacko. We did not show up, and we have to dissect this game with utmost care.
We do. Well, there was a real sense of that on the night, I thought, boys. Out-coached. I felt like Geelong just had extra numbers right around the ground, and the way they moved the ball was just amazing, and you've got to tip your hat to them. It's got to be said they have to get their flowers for the way they were able to move the ball and the way they were able to defend it going the other way. But yeah, look, looking at us more insular, Nico, I think, we have a lot of questions still up on the whiteboard. Where are we at? We're right back to where we were after the Freo game, I feel. We just don't really know where we stack up amongst the rest of the competition. Had a lot of hope going into this game after the performance against Hawthorn, and to dish that up was surprising and just really disappointing, I think, was the overall feel after leaving that game on Saturday night.
And we'll get to the specifics a little bit more, but I felt we were so reactive to Geelong coming into the game, and you could tell with some of the positional moves that Fly had made prior to the start of the match, and again, we'll touch on those shortly, but yeah, it did feel like we were just waiting to see what Geelong would do rather than take the game on ourselves. And as a result, the game got away from us very quickly. You could probably even sense in the second quarter the way things were tracking, unfortunately. So we'll delve deep into all of that. But let's start, as we always do, with the pie that caught our eye. Marcus, the floor is yours.
I've gone with Beau McCreary this week, gents, and I was very disappointed with Beau's performance. I thought after being offered $7 million by the Tassie Devils, he was a shoe-in for a good month of football with his stocks rising. And really, to be more serious about the matter, in a match where we saw Nick Daicos brilliantly tagged out of it by his lofty standards, Geordie to go, he was back in and under and doing really good things, but you can't rely on one or two blokes to beat a side that's as quality as a grand finalist from last year. That was the perfect opportunity with Ned Long playing forward for a guy like Beau McCreary to stand up at the contest. But as he has too many times this season, and maybe even last year as well, Nico, you've highlighted it, just too quiet for too long throughout this match. And we were just crying out for a bit of contest, a bit of clean hands, making sure we're getting first access, particularly in that second half. And on the stat sheet, yes, 20 disposals, a stack of tackles, had a shot on goal, which was absolutely atrocious at the end of the game as well. But I just didn't see the impact that we're used to seeing Bo have. And with a mature body like his, I just thought we were crying out for a good runner around the contest with explosive power to counter the Max Holmes and the Bailey Smiths and these guys who were just all over us in that game. And so, yeah, for me, Bo needs to take that next step this season to become, I think, elevate himself as a more senior player. This was the perfect game for him when the screws were tightening to show up, but he just couldn't get the job done.
It was a surprising performance, particularly with some of the notes you've said there, Marcus, about what we have expected from him. Even in games where he has been quiet, there were always small patches of his speed on show or his hunt for the footy or a big chase down tackle, but it was just non-existent on Saturday night. And Jack, you have to wonder, he was out with general soreness against Hawthorn. Is he carrying something else? Is there another reason as to why it was such a poor showing? And again, he wasn't alone on Saturday night, but as Marcus said, when you've got an opportunity right in front of you to have an impact against a star-studded midfield in Max Holmes and Bailey Smith and not deliver, it does get you to start asking some questions.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I think everything that we usually get out of Bo McCreary on a good day is everything that we didn't get. In this game, it was everything that we've needed, really. We needed someone to provide a spark from us, to hit a contest at full speed, to have a chase down tackle, and we just got none of that. I was actually surprised to hear Marcus read out his stats just then, 20 disposals, because up until, the last quarter where he had a couple of nightmares, I didn't notice him whatsoever. So probably speaks to his overall impact on the game. And I think his name's just starting to come up now a little bit more frequently, as we're having these really down games. And we speak about this often, about when, the stars aren't showing, Nick's not taking hold of the game, Pendles can't have the impact on the game that he can, our forwards aren't firing. We really do rely on these type of players to lift us up and keep us afloat. And when they, don't have an impact, it really has a massive difference. On our game, the pilot caught my eye this week, Nico, was on a positive note, was Geordie DeGoey. The first half, he was immense. Again, it's kind of ironic, I feel, where we're at now, where we sit here and, again, we don't really know where we're at in the season. We don't really know where we're at. And it's historically, we've always wondered where Geordie's best position was at, whether it was forward, whether it was midfield. And he has had a couple of really good games playing that perfect sort of 20 disposal and a couple of snags. And this game, in the absence of, I'm not saying he was absent completely, but after being tagged out, as Marcus just said, in the absence of Nick Daicos, I thought he really, really stepped up. He was super clean below his feet when we really lacked that the whole night. And again, look, after halftime, probably went out of the game a little bit, but was by far and away our best player and one of very few that could hold his head up high.
Yeah, certainly. And it's nice to see a little bit of consistency starting to appear with Jordan DeGoey's game as well. It hasn't just been Saturday night. He's been putting in some great efforts over the last couple of weeks. I'll stay on the positive because I don't think there'll be too many more after this. But Jack Buller, I thought, was one of our better players on Saturday night. And I've always felt that his inclusion in this squad was going to be beneficial for us going forward. Had a little bit of experience with Sydney, but had a career-high 9 marks. I think 7 of them came in the first half. I thought his leading patterns were fantastic, created some great space inside forward 50, and was probably the only forward to really give Geelong some headaches as well on Saturday night because of the way he was moving and clunking the footy. Finished with 2 goals, which in the way the game panned out is probably above average. And I just feel like there is a bright future for Jack Bull. I know he didn't have the start to the year in Collingwood colours, but he would have liked. But it's going to take a little bit of time with him just not having too much experience at the level. And I thought he definitely stood out for us on Saturday night.
Well, it's a great point, mate, because after, the start of the year that he had, he probably wouldn't have been forgiven to not really make it back into the side. But with the Membry injury, he's been given his opportunity again. And in the last couple of weeks, he's been a real standout. And if there's any positives to carry in from the Hawthorn game to this one, is that our forwards still looked to be on the move a little bit when they did get their opportunity to fly at a mark. And Jack Buller, in my opinion, led the charge at that. Really flew himself at every contest, got up the ground as well, which is good to see. So big tick for his game, and hopefully that can keep going.
Yeah, I love the point about his leading patterns as well. It seemed like in the first half we had the ability to use corridor on occasion. It wasn't consistent, but in that second half it completely dried up until maybe junk time right at the end of the game when there was blokes loose everywhere. But Jack Buller was the guy getting onto these leads and he was marking the ball a true half forward position and he was on the fat side. And I thought to myself, oh, that's interesting. Like he's repeatedly been able to get to that same spot and on plenty of occasions actually take uncontested grabs. And he also found himself completely in space in the pocket. I think Ned Long hit him for his first kick, a goal of the game. So just a different type of aerial presence mixed in with being able to get around the ground, and I reckon we've got to pursue with him even once Membry becomes healthy again, because Tim Membry goes out of games the way Bo McCreary goes out of games, and even though the supply wasn't consistent in this match, Jack Buller has shown enough that he deserves another crack at it, because if you're taking 7-8 marks as a key forward, we haven't seen that for a while at the Pies.
No, absolutely. 8 score involvements as well and nearly 20 disposals for the match. So I like Jack and you, but I like Jack Buller. I think he's definitely got a future in the black and white. So glad we just inserted a few positives, because there are unfortunately too many negatives to discuss in this game. And I mentioned it off the top. I think we were way too reactive coming into this game against Geelong, and it was highlighted by 2 positional changes that we made at the start of the game that we don't usually see. The first one was Ned Long playing as a defensive forward, trying to quell Tom Stewart's influence. Now, I think I'm not sure Ned Long has the capabilities to play that role, and I mean that on a sense that haven't really seen much of his forward craft, and again on Saturday night that didn't really come to fruition. But his disposal and his decision making has never been a strong suit of Ned Long. That's why he's so great in and under tackling and being able to win the footy in a contested sense. So I don't know what the thinking was to have someone of his ilk to, try and stop a Tom Stewart who was playing a milestone game of his own right. Yes, he can apply some great pressure, but he hasn't got the speed. And again, when he does have the footy in hand, because the key part, I feel like, to a defensive forward is the forward part. You still need to be able to impact the scoreboard and create opportunities. And he wasn't able to do any of that. Didn't finish with a goal for the evening. I get that he was obviously playing a role, but that didn't exactly work out either. And then when you look at the other side of his game, just makes poor decisions by hand and by foot. And it does cost us opportunities at goal going the other way. I think Ned's a great talent and he's been wonderful for us since coming into the senior squad on a regular basis. But to me, it's midfield or bust for Ned Long. I don't see him playing any other position on the ground.
So what was it that made us choose to do that? Like, I'm not so sure I'm that worried about Tom Stewart, as good as he is, and maybe the thinking was it's his 200th and he could have a blinder, but you're right, Ned Long playing as a defensive forward tag role. We've seen other teams do it successfully against Tom Stewart, but is Ned Long that guy?
No.
And just on him, I'm not sure if it's the best place to start, but just in terms of like rewind 12 months ago to Ned Long coming on the scene, he was having 25 plus disposals, had a real purple patch through about this part of the season last year. And he always seemed like he wanted to use the first handball that he could see or get rid of it, because that's probably what he's told to do, find guys like Nick and Geordie on the outside. But you're right, the decision-making and the disposal to go with it, he just looks very rushed compared to what he did 12 months ago. So any thoughts on how his game may have regressed in that time, Jack?
That's a great point, because we made it while we're at the game on Saturday night, and we have made it for a few weeks now. It just always feels like he's never just hitting the easy first disposal, whether it's by hand or by foot. He is handball happy. We don't often see him throw it on the boot, but yeah, just strange considering that, again, this time last year, as Mark's just highlighted, that, he was just that in and under, get it out to the blokes running past. And his role and his job in this side was much more simple, and that's where he flourished. And again, to your point, mate, of going to Tom Stewart, just a really strange choice, I thought. I would have thought that the threat for Tom Stewart in the back line would be being the spare man in the middle of the ball, flying airily, and Ned Long's certainly not the first person that I'd think of to be able to compete with Tom Stewart in the air. And if you look at that game again, I think a lot of their attacks and a lot of their reasons why they were able to move the ball so freely was due to blokes like Tom Stewart able to mark the ball in our defence and get the ball moving forward. So, strangely enough, yes, you want to see these defensive forwards sort of get on the end of a few as well and be able to impact with ball in hand, but just a really strange matchup for us to go with Ned Long to Tom Stewart. I would have preferred someone like a Bo McCreary who, can somewhat compete aerially, but also you have to mind him when the ball hits the deck when he's around goals. And, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I think that's one we got wrong.
No, but you're right. And what I was about to say was I would have loved to have seen that move change at halftime. Get Ned back into the contest, into the coalface where he plays his best footy. Bo's not having an impact there, so take him out. Don't get him on the outside. We could have played him on the wing as well, and I'll get to why in a sec. But I'd rather Bo play a more defensive forward role because he's been successful in that. And if they do decide to, and if our attacks inside 50 are trending towards the Stewart direction, you're right, Jack, he can compete aerially. And when the ball hits the deck, I'm trusting Bo McCreary a lot more than I am Tom Stewart. So that would have definitely been a change I would have liked to have seen.
Well, also, even looking at Bo's numbers, it's still most of his possessions coming in the front half of the ground. So it's not like he was a Ned Long's going to play the defensive forward role and Bo McCreary will play midfield. It was, I didn't see Bo McCreary in there at all. And, much like other facets of the ground, around the grounds, letting the ball being transitioned too easily, the middle of the ground was an area that we struggled in all night again, transitioning again from that game against the Hawks. And I would have loved to seen a Ned Long in there, scrapping it away and trying to get something going forward, which again, as Marcus highlighted, was his absolute one with last year.
So the other one for me was Isaac Quainer playing on the wing on Ollie Dempsey. And the numbers can tell you one thing, but when you're watching the game live, I thought he got destroyed. And they highlighted a couple of passages where Quainer was either on the wrong side of Dempsey at a 6-6-6, or he was just given way too much space, or Quainer was too attracted to the football, allowed Dempsey to be on the outside. And that's why he's one of the best women in the competition. Again, another move. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but another move that didn't really make too much sense to me. Quainer's best efforts are, and we spoke about how he's been improving with his defensive traits this year and how he's a great run-off half-back. Why wasn't he playing there and trusted to have played that wing position?
I'm glad you've mentioned that was the other clear one that seemed a bit off. And I think it was because we didn't have a matchup for Ollie Dempsey that the coaches said, based on this guy's running power, which is so strong, and they've got plenty of great runners. It's been mentioned many a time this season and even last year. Like, they've just got so many guys who can cover the ground so well. And I think Q was caught out of position on a number of times, and it actually in the second half led to direct scores, either by Dempsey himself with that amazing goal to start the third, it must be said, but as well as Dempsey being far more equipped at being able to come down into defence and be that exit on the fat side, and then but also knowing how to get forward too, and Q just being caught out of position too many times.
How much does Perryman's absence impact that?
Absolutely.
Well, again, it's the obvious one in terms of why he had to move there, but you can't put Roan Steele on Dempsey. You probably can't put Jack Crisp as good as he's been for so long, because this guy's like 21, 22, and he's already an elite runner in this game, Ollie Dempsey. So he's an absolute star. But I think that's another place to continue the conversation. The Cats were just far better at covering the ground than we were. And even if it was a tactical win in the box from halftime onwards, they had the guys who had the athletic talent to actually go out there and make it happen. Yeah. So I think we got exposed so many times on that transfer out of our forward 50, and they just spread and run and connected, and our blokes were so gassed by the time the ball got to there. It was a bit like take your pick, Ollie Henry or Jeremy Cameron in that forward line.
It was a training drill really for them, especially in that second half. And I think both sides of the ball, when we were defending and then indeed when we were attacking, they just seemed to have waves and waves of blokes that were either there to grab the ball when they had it or there to apply pressure to us when we had it. I really think, I haven't had a chance to go back and watch the game yet or listen to the various punditry around the AFL community, Nico, but I'd be fascinated to see the sort of moves that Chris Scott and his coaching staff made to make that happen on the weekend. Going back to Isaac Quainer, look, I hate to say this because he is one of my favourite players, but I really think it's time that his name starts getting mentioned as one that really needs to start having a lift for us in this season. He's been promoted back to the leadership position again after having a down year in being promoted in 24, having a down year and then having a good year last year. And it's just too often that I'm scrolling through the stats and I can't get to his name until the last 4 or 5 names in the comp. And I don't want to put pressure on him, and I'm not here calling for his head or anything like that. But as a leader of this club, and again in a funky transitional stage that we are, he is one of these blokes that we hope will be around for a long time, and we'll hope we'll be playing footy for a long time. And right now, what we're getting out of him is just not good enough. Mind you, in saying that, was playing a position that he probably wouldn't have been familiar with on Saturday night.
Put him back in the back line. You touched on Roan Steele as well. He's probably had an average couple of weeks, so you just another watch for me with Roan Steele. Nick Daicos, are we starting to get a little bit concerned with him? I only asked that. I mean, again, credit where credit's due for Mullen, and he was outstanding, playing a key role in limiting Nick's impact. I mean, he had 29 disposals, Nick Daicos, but you just didn't feel like any of those were really hitting the mark. According to Champion Data, he kicked at 41% kicking efficiency and had 7 kicking clangers against Geelong. and that's 4 more than anybody on the ground. Now, that in isolation is obviously a concern, but when you look at the last 3 weeks for Nick Daicos from a kicking efficiency point of view, he's had the game-high kicking clangers in each of those 3 games and has been 45% or lower in his kicking efficiency in each of those 3 games. And that's resulted in a win, a draw, and a loss. Now, I understand he obviously gets the ball a lot more than other players do, hence those stats are going to be skewed slightly against him. In saying that, they're not numbers we are used to seeing with Nick Daicos. He is usually so precise and so careful with the way he distributes the football, whether it is by hand or by foot. He has incredible standards, which we adhere to, and we talk about Nick Daicos, which also plays a part in this conversation. But it has been apparent over the last 3 to 4 weeks that his kicking has become a little bit of a concern. Not necessarily his decision-making. I feel like he's making the right decisions in terms of where he wants to place the kick, but it's the execution that has become a bit of an issue.
Well, we said coming into or off Anzac Day, like, was he sore after that match? And it does now invite some speculation about whether there is a little bit of a niggle there, because I just don't feel like he's covering the ground. Like, he still has that blue in the face look about him, and he looks like he's willing himself to the contest. But compared to that first 4 or 5 weeks of football, he just doesn't seem to have that extra bit of spark, and his kicks seem to be lacking a bit more of that venom that we've seen as recently as this season, Nico. So I do wonder if there is something there that either the tag is also catalysing in terms of him questioning his decision-making, and then is it a bit harder for him to hit those kicks given that we've had some forward line issues? I don't know. There's a bit in the air there, Jacko. Do you see any change in his confidence at all? Like, what might it be?
Yeah, again, I mean, look, we are Nick Daicos-centric as Collingwood supporters, and we probably are very biased, but it would seem that after, coming out of that Brisbane game as late as he did, looking as sore as he did, and then I thought he was really good Anzac Day, but still, again, really struggled with kicking boots, which is, in the midfielders conversation, you look at all the stats of all the champion midfielders in the game. They've all got shocking disposal efficiency by virtue of the fact, mate, as what you said before, is that they get it so bloody much. But it's almost his one with the ability to explode away from a pack and get into space, which is why he is such a damaging kick, because he has so much time and space to do it. But that's just been missing since that sort of him coming out of the game against Brisbane. Yes, he was good on Anzac Day against Essendon. I mean, that's a bit of an asterisk. But since then, it feels like he's struggled, as Mark's just said, to really burst off a contest and really use his power to get away. And I just wonder if, he might be carrying something pretty heavily at the moment, as, not only is he might be carrying something from an injury sense, but, we do rely on him a lot. Like, there isn't a lot aside from someone like a Pendles, or that's about it, really. I mean, seriously, when we think about it, there's no one else there really giving him a chop out, to give him a rest, to allow him to get to that next contest, to allow him to, do that link up play. So I just wonder if the reliance and if he's carrying something from an injury sense is starting to weigh down on him a bit.
Which probably answers the question I had during the night about if it was worth trying him up forward at some stage during that game. Again, the consequence to that is a struggle to win the ball from the middle of the ground, which again allowed Geelong to get things moving in that second half. But again, you just felt like him being at forward can still present some type of threat. It's probably Mullen's weakest part to his game, that defensive side. And we know what Nick Daicos can do inside forward 50, albeit it is a pretty strong Geelong defence that he would have been up against. But it was probably worth the question.
And now that you say it, there's like Josh Daicos comes into the midfield finally in the final term. There's just, a few things that maybe there's a bit more risk required in the coach's box earlier in that second half, just to move some magnets around to give guys a run at it who were going cold or had already gone cold in the match and had found a real challenge to work their way back into it, because Geelong is such a professional outfit and they do give you very little when they've got you where they want you. But also just wanted to come back to a point, Nico, about the Hawks game, and obviously we're all very happy after that match. We kicked 15 goals 3, and the Hawks did not kick particularly straight in that game. It could be said that they should have been up by 3-4 goals at halftime. We put ourselves into a position to win the match. We know what happened. We move on a week, how long it is in football, and we come out and kick 0 goals 6 in that third term, which makes the scoreline very unflattering by three-quarter time, and then Geelong go on to make it really an emphatic win. So if Hawthorn had a kick straight the week prior, do we sit in these cheese feeling like last week we were top 6 and this week feels like we're bottom 6 in terms of where we might end up at the end of this year. So given we don't know where we are yet, is there a sense that we perhaps got away with one last week by virtue of our straight kicking and the Hawks spraying it? Because I'm really struggling to see. You put this out there a while ago, Jacko. Like the good sides, the difference between their best and their worst is very slim. I feel like Bo McCreary is a great symbol of the Collingwood Football Club at the moment. When he's on and he's fantastic, he's great.
Yeah.
When he disappears, he's shocking. And this seems to be a feature of our season so far.
I think the general consensus, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think the general consensus was that we did get away with one against Hawthorn. I think the key difference here, however, is the way we were playing against the Hawks was still such a stark difference to the way that we're playing against the Cats. Now, how much you put that into what the opposition allows you to do is probably a different conversation, but it just felt like we had so much more freedom in that game against Hawthorn. Our backs were against the wall. We were in a 5-day break. We had a lot of personnel missing, had to rely on a few others to stand up, and they did. The Dan Houstons, Dan McStays, which we spoke about last week. We actually almost played too well. I mean, I don't think that's probably the right way to go about it, but I just feel like the way that we played our football against Hawthorn allowed us to be in a position to win the game, and that probably gave us more confidence to think, hey, we actually are capable of playing like this. And then we go into a Geelong match where it felt like that, again, we were probably too reactive to what they were trying to do, which we didn't need to be. And that our natural game just never came to the fore because we just had an inability to win the footy at the coalface, but also take our opportunities when they were given to us.
Yeah, for mine, there's two parts to this. I think it really highlights, and like after the Hawthorn game, I was sort of happy to sort of, not happy, but, you know, there was big talk about how much they dominated us out of the middle and how much they wasted their opportunities. But still, when you were able to move the ball like we were against Hawthorn, it papered over a lot of cracks. And I think this game really highlights how vulnerable we are in the centre of the ground. And when you aren't allowed to move the ball then from half back to half forward, like Geelong just took that away from us completely, then how, you know, vulnerable we just look in general. So that's probably 2 points that feed into each other a bit. For me, it starts in the engine room still for us. And that's been a Collingwood story as long as time, certainly for as long as we've been sitting behind the mic talking about the Pies. But yeah, I just think when we get belted so clearly in the middle, and we have such a heavy reliance on blokes like Pendlebury and Daicos to be having good games, and when they don't, or when they aren't able to get into the game like they were on Saturday, and then Geelong can take our plan B away from us, which is clearly what wasn't shown against Hawthorn. The way we were able to move the ball from defence to forward was just outstanding, but that was just, again, taken away from us on Saturday. So then what are we left with? We have no aces in our deck.
But at 3/4 time in the Cats game, let's say we kicked 6 goals straight instead of 0 goals 6. Like, isn't it amazing what a bit of scoreboard pressure can do to the overall flow of the footy moving forward? Because I feel like we did not get momentum back once in that second half. And for that to happen is really damning. I think regardless of the opposition, like sometimes sides will still come and put a bit of, a few goals and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, are they going to come back into this game? But there was just none of that in this match.
Yeah, do you also feel like there's just, you sit there again, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but Marcus mentioned it before about at halftime it felt like Geelong were ready to reset. They were ready to sort of change a few things, or not necessarily dramatically change personnel around the ground, but they were ready to try a few different things to go on with the game. And it would just felt like we were kind of sitting at halftime happy with the position we were in. As a supporter, I said, I'll take 10 points at halftime. Think we've got a lot of improvement left in us. But then kind of felt like we were just sort of left at the park bench a little bit. Geelong just overtook us, and the game was over 10 minutes into the third quarter, and just like it just happened right before our very eyes. Game's gone. So I just wonder whether it's the coaching staff or the players, not really too sure. Again, I'm not here to call for anyone's head, but it just felt like we were too stagnant coming in after halftime, and we're more relying on it will come our way, we'll come good, but we just never did. And against the top sides like Geelong, Brisbane, another one that they touched us up a few weeks ago, you just can't afford to do that.
So therefore, we got whacked by Brizzy, we got whacked by Geelong, and then is the Hawthorn performance an anomaly? That's what I'm trying to get at, because I feel like this season we'll beat sides that we should beat, and then we probably won't beat sides that are a lot better than us. And then for those middle games, it could be a toss of a coin. That's how I see our season. The mid-season draft, we might get one guy. It's not going to change our midfield mix. Anderson, loving him early, but he's not clean. Ned Long, another one who is slow and we love him for his tackling and his contested ball, but he's not that Rolls Royce that's going to support Nick Daicos. So I think it's just an interesting one to earmark, given we've been beaten by more than 50 points by both of last year's grand finalists. And it's an interesting indicator this far into the season.
Yeah, I think there's enough of a sample size to suggest that it's trending that way, where it is going to be a struggle against the top sides, comfortable wins against the bottom ones, and then a toss of the coin in between. And yeah, I think back to your point about the goal kicking, I think good sides kick more goals and points more often. We did it only 6 times in 26 games when we won the premiership in 23. Did we kick more behinds and goals? And one of them was in the premiership in the actual grand final.
And
so
badly.
So it looks as though that, it is as stupid and as obvious as it is to say, if you kick more goals and points, you're more than likely going to win. And again, maybe Hawthorn just had an off night in that regard.
Look, and I know, much like if you're a Hawthorn supporter against the Hawthorn, in the Hawthorn game, that you'd be sitting there and you look at the scoreboard and at halftime, they've had 10 more scoring shots than us, but really it happens in the first quarter. I know at the end of the third quarter we sit there and go, oh gee, we kick not goals 6, but I also feel like it's not like we were getting good entries and getting good shots on goal that we were wasting. So which even more gets to my point about just the type of entries that we are getting. We're not getting any from the centre midfield. We're getting really poor entries when we do get them, when we can get them off the half-back flank. So that's probably the biggest talking point. I feel like we probably need to be careful in just blaming this on not kicking goals as opposed to our avenue to goal first and foremost.
100%. And the two usually go hand in glove, because just the way it's being supplied will affect often where the ball's being marked and then how systematically you're scoring. But yeah, I think we got a bit of a sugar hit against the Dons and then the Blues, or the Blues and then the Dons. That was lovely because we've hoped to beat them each year. It feels like we're getting a bit of a reality check over the next couple of weeks. So,
can we touch on the back line, please, before we move on?
Yeah.
Because that's also a pretty key talking point, I think, that's come out of this game. Now, Darcy Moore exits at half-time with a concussion, and we don't see him for the was it half-time or quarter-time?
Three-quarter time, I thought.
Just before half.
Yeah, just before half-time. Sorry. Yeah.
There you go.
That could explain what you're about to say. So exits the game at half-time with the concussion, so he's obviously going to miss this week's game against the Swans. But before and then afterwards without him, there seemed to be a little bit of a difference. Regardless, we were again giving way too much space to those Geelong forwards. Shannon Neal would have been having a field day. Ollie Henry ends up kicking 4, who I had to chat to in the rooms post-game for SEN, but that's okay. We'll get through that. And even Jeremy Cameron, who didn't torch us really till the second half, was still able to get plenty of the football thereafter. The back line has been one of the highlights of the year in terms of the structure and the way that sort of played out, but it seemed like we got away with it a little bit in the first half because Geelong seemed to be bombing the ball a little bit more, going inside forward 50 than they did. But as soon as they went into that kick mark game in the third quarter, it was over. And Frampton got caught too many times, allowing his opponent to get space in front of the football. Same can be said for a couple of other forwards. Jeremy Howe got caught a couple of times, and it just felt like we were gifting them opportunities in front of goal. So I'm not sure what the answer is. There's been a lot made about Darcy Moore's performance again. We know he's going to miss, but it was a pretty disappointing effort in that second half from the backline unit.
And if a guy like Harry Perryman is that integral to our defensive system, then there's something very wrong. But I think Isaac Quaynor playing a wing role also didn't help proceedings. I think that, yes, we looked far worse once Darcy Moore went off the ground, but gee whiz, there was like some of the matchup, like I'm pretty sure I saw him on Paddy Dangerfield rather than a Jerry McCameron or a Shannon Neal, even in the first term. So if that doesn't speak to the confidence of the coaches or perhaps his own ability as he's easing his way back into the season, unfortunately it's further delayed. But I'm sure some will say that it's going to create an opportunity for someone else. But he looked like he wanted to get rid of the footy before he had possession, was my summation of his half of footy. And there was one moment where it came off, I think, Frampton or Howie, and then he claimed the mark as if it was his own. I'm not sure if you boys saw that. So whatever was happening above the shoulders for Darcy Moore off the back of the Hawks game, you feel like that coupled with a delayed start to the year has really crippled his confidence. And it is worrying that we are starting to think, does this defensive system function better without him in it, because I hate the fact that he went off the ground. I think it exposed us even further. But guys like Frampton, his game was criticised, and Jeremy Howe, they were probably thinking, I'm just going to try and stay as close to goal as possible, because I don't know if I've got coverage when these Geelong Cats switch the ball and then score off turnover. And they did that time and time again in the second half. So I think it's a rough night. It's a dirty night at the office. We've been very good for a long period. But gee whiz, we're going to need some soldiers back there, very quick, smart.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I was going to say, I don't know if we were better off or worse off when Darcy Moore went out of the game in really unfortunate circumstances, and hope he's okay and all the rest of it. But he looked nervous whenever he went near the ball. It was kind of like sad to see in a way. I don't think, through all these sort of up and down games over the years, I don't think we've ever seen that Darcy Moore. So as Marcus said, it feels like, the slow start to the year, the game in lights against Hawthorn, which, many would probably be pointing the finger at him for, seemed to have got to him. And then unfortunately, even with the way he got injured, a lot of talk about technique and the way he put himself over the ball, and just very un-Darcy Moore-like. So look, if we can think about this from a glass half full perspective, hopefully he can now go away, have a bit of a quick refresh. And then he'll be back for the West Coast game, fingers crossed, which might be, the type of game where he can gain a bit of confidence. I mean, touch with the way we're going, that could be a bit of a danger game. But just another point on just our defensive system, just so many times I was sat up behind the goals, Nico, and you got a good vantage point when the Cats were moving the ball the way they did. And just so many times blokes like Billy Frampton, Jeremy Howe, Dan Houston was in that conversation as well, just unnecessarily departing their man to a ball that they were never going to impact. And it was just really disappointing, because exactly right, no man's land, because the ball just gets over the back far too easily. I'd much rather see the ball carrier be allowed to take another 10 metres and they have to have a ping from 50, 60, 40, wherever it is, as opposed to, just running up, half defending a ball that they were, again, never going to get to, and then they get a sure thing goal out the back. That was, pretty deflating to see after, Billy Frampton especially having, a really good season up until this point.
And that's what caught Quainer out a few times as well on the wing, doing the exact same thing. There's got to be a little bit of onus on the midfielders as well, to give the defence a bit more assurity to be like they can stay back and know that the midfield's applying pressure to the ball carrier before they go inside 50, which then allows the defence to have a bit more of a role. But, as you said, I think the right word there, Mark, is just a dirty night for the defensive unit.
But again, on the night, I just would have liked to have seen, yes, look, what good things can come out of only losing this game by, 15, 20 points. But when Geelong were getting on top early in that third term, right, just say, all right, we clearly need just to not hold on for dear life here, but we clearly need to take some sting out of this game. So we'll like some direction to the back line, just to, right, you got to, not man on man. I know everyone calls out the footy, I get a man. That's not the way defences are set up these days. But just have a bit more accountability that your bloke is going to have a hard time getting on the end of the footy, as opposed to worrying about getting, the footy yourself and getting us going forward. Just trying to, nullify the game before you can then get back on top.
Anything else from this match, gents? Or have we covered? Still side bottom.
Yeah.
You got caught in the back line quite a bit, mainly because, again, we've had to shuffle some things around. You made a comment in the group chat post-game that you feel like the tide might be turning and not for the better. Still side bottom. He's my favourite player of all time, and it hurt to hear, but I think there's some merit to what you're saying.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure of his exact disposal counts over the last 3-4 weeks of football, but I would suggest it's no more than a dozen touches. It's a couple of good things here and there, but not enough to substantiate a veteran status performance. Even if we're playing against good sides, at the end of the day, Steele is a legacy leader at the club and he deserves to play out his career. I just think that if we, as I've sort of earmarked, get to the bye and it's seeming like we're not really coping, I think we've got the Dogs, we've got the Ds leading into the bye, which are good tests, I think. They're sides that should be about the mark, rounding out the top 10 or thereabouts this year. If we get to that point of the season and Steele still playing a half forward, half back. Like, what's he doing at half back? Yeah. Come on. The last time I think was against West Coast last year, we saw him play half back and everyone said,
good.
No, thank you. Like, there's plenty of positions he can play on. I'd rather stick him in the middle, quite frankly.
Put him full forward.
Then move him forward on rotation. But yeah, Nico, it hurts to say it, as I said in the group chat, but it's just not a performance that constitutes AFL level. I don't think, Jacko, do you have a different view?
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. There are a few times though, like with how bad our backline was going, and he had to sort of stick himself under a high ball where I'm sitting there going, I actually wouldn't rather any other bloke right now underneath this than Steele Sovereign, just because he's so bloody smart at positioning himself. However, yeah, absolutely spot on. It feels like at the moment we're trying to find a role for Steele within this team. We're trying to fit him in, which is, dangerous times, and is usually the really big sign for far out maybe that it's coming to an end, which is really sad. And I think a few years ago I might have said something along these lines, and every time I open my mouth on Steele Sidebottom, it comes good again. So I'm hoping that can happen again, because like you, mate, he's absolutely one of my favourite all-time Collingwood players, if not the favourite, and it's kind of sad to see. But again, this conversation about, are we better off long term? And it's not necessarily for a draft hand or anything like that, but long term, are we better off looking at getting kids in the side and getting games under them, as opposed to having blokes like Steele Sidebottom out there every week? Now, the opposite side to that is he's been around for eternity, as has someone like Pendles, and the pure sort of lesson that young kids will be getting from having blokes like him in and around the huddle at 3/4 time and quarter time, and in the rooms at half time, and just being there from a directive point of view would be worth its weight in gold. However, it just feels like we're trying to fit him in somewhere, and to have that sort of impact when you're coaching impact when you're trying to just sort of find your own way would be extremely difficult. So a watch, that's for sure, but unfortunately a watch that looks like it's going down a negative path.
My tip is that he will play against the Swans, and actually maybe he'll get rested before.
He has to play against the Pendlebury.
Yeah, we're missing two. I
think he'll come out and have a blinder against the Eagles. I think Howie will, and I think Pendles will too. But then it gets to that point into the back half of the season. There's a guy like Harry Demateo, there's a guy like Harvey Harrison being deprived of opportunity. If Steele's coming in and having 15 to 18 touches, you're playing decent footy, that's a different conversation. It's when you're having 9, 10 touches, not really seen for many parts of the match. That's where I start to wonder if there's a selection integrity issue that needs to be upheld.
This is a bloke who last year as well, Nico, was one of our top 5 players every single week. Let's not forget he won the Anzac Day medal. Yeah. He was flying. So it's not like, even that you talk about the 15 and 19 disposals. He was 25 to 30 most week, a la a Pendles still this year, which is, I know it's crazy to think, but again, it just looks like he's on a slippery slope. One other thing from this game, Nico, I feel like we've spoken about it enough probably, and I might regret bringing this up, but where are we at with the Pendles not playing against the Swans, and what does that say about our overall outlook on this season? Obviously, I want him to play against West Coast because it's 90,000 people. It's a momentous occasion, not just for the Collingwood Football Club, not just for Scott Pendlebury, but for the AFL community. It's massive. We may never see it in our lifetime again, and that in itself just deserves to be at the MCG with as many people watching as possible. But what does that say for sort of where we're at and what we view on this season? Because really, we should be going up there against Sydney in a game that we all feel we will start underdogs. It would be the most Collingwood thing ever if we went up there and jagged the 4 points. But in a game where, yes, we feel like we're underdogs, are we almost just now, both as fans and indeed as a club, just sort of writing that game off? Because if we weren't, I feel like he has to play because of how good he's been last few weeks. Yes, people talk about, resting him and making sure he's, the longevity, all the rest of it. But, it's a 5 or 6 day break. Not even, it's not like the short turnaround was against the Anzac Day game to the Hawks game. So I just wonder where you boys sit with that. Are we like that? Feels like to me that says a lot about where we're at and says a lot about how we feel about how this season's going to go.
I think the first part of your question answered it already.
Yeah.
The fact that this is a unique situation, a once in a lifetime potentially opportunity where we're going to see a player break the game's record in front of his home crowd, and potentially will extend that record to a point where it might not ever be reached or might not be reached for a long, long time. I think it'd be naive of us to suggest that we were probably going to get to this point this year when we were looking at what the season was going to be and even sensing on what our predictions were in the preseason pods of what that was going to look like. And there was always going to be a part of this season where it was going to turn into a celebratory few weeks or half a year as opposed to trying to win a premiership because we're in a situation where we've got some veterans that have been with us for a long time that need to be celebrated accordingly. And I think that's going to override any parts to are we going to win or should we be playing Pendles every possible time that we can in order to try and win games of footy. So as much as that needs to be taken into account, as much as wins and losses are still very important to a season at hand, I think 4-4-1 going into the Sydney game is a better result than some may have thought, and I think it allows you enough time and enough space to flirt with playing Pendlebury when you feel like it suits the club and the competition best. If this was round 15, 16 and we were teetering around a top 6 spot, it's a different conversation. But we're in May, and I think we need to leave that give that opportunity for Pendles to celebrate accordingly.
Yeah, I tend to concur. I think we need to give this not just the round in which he will break the game's record, but the build up to it, and doing it really, really well is going to make it a special memory in what might otherwise be a season to forget for Collingwood. I hope we're there. I hope we're there and thereabouts. But Tassie coming in, the potential of higher draft picks being more important than ever, needing to get some good quality youth into the club. Yeah, a Pendles game record, the Nick Daicos 100, whatever else comes later in the season with whoever we're saying farewell to. It's that sort of season for me.
And who knows if it could spark something greater after a performance like that.
Who knows? Yeah.
And the momentum it could build. So
it almost did in his 400th. I feel like we went up against Sydney the following week when they were, they were on fire, and we almost got them. And ultimately, that was the end of our season. In hindsight, I think we might have got another really good win against the Lions and had a pretty strong finish to the season. But that was the game that put the nail in the coffin, unfortunately. But you're right. Yeah, it was just interesting. I was just hearing a few people. Geez, so many people are talking about it, and so many people are after him. For this, it's just ridiculous. I mean, this doesn't confirm how much everyone hates Collingwood, and I don't know what will, because he literally is the nicest bloke I think in the competition. It hasn't ever put a foot wrong on or off field in his whole career. And some of the backlash he's copying is just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, it's just interesting hearing that, TJ on the Footy Show said, is it the marketing team or is it, the coaching staff that are making this decision? I just thought it was a point to bring up.
Yeah. And to the Geelong supporters that booed Pendles when it was having a shot on goal. Yeah, real classy. All right, let's get to your votes, please.
I've gone one vote to Jeremy Howe. We didn't speak about him, but I thought of any of our defenders. Laid a big tackle on Jeremy Cameron and did his best to compete, but very hard once that system had broken down. I thought his performance was pretty good. Jack Buller gets the 2 votes, and I've gone 3 to Geordie De Goey.
Yeah, fairly similar. I've gone 1 to Jack Buller just for his presence. Not necessarily a breakout game, but certainly his most positive performance so far. For the Pies, I gave 2 to Pendles, just because when the game was there still to be won, and even when we were lacking, he was still standing out, and it's just unbelievable to see. And I gave 3 to Geordie De Goey, with Jeremy Howe being very stiff to not make my votes, Nico.
Yeah, very similar to you, Jack. I gave 1 to Pendles, 2 to Jack Buller, and 3 to Jordan De Goey. I think that quartet were probably the only ones in the conversation really for votes. De Goey and Pendles were the only ones to get coaches' votes as well. And this could be the highest disposal count Nick Daicos has had without featuring in the votes as well, with his 29 touches. So it just goes to show what type of night that was. Let's get the cans on. Let's do SpeakPie. There's only a few to go through, but there's some interesting takes as well. Mostly from our regulars, which we love hearing from. So thank you, everybody that sends it through. But a tough night to get on the blower by the sounds of it, particularly after a performance like that. That was our biggest loss to Geelong since the 2020 semi-final.
I was going to say, it's one of those games where no matter where we are on the ladder, we always seem to compete against the Cats. So to get it blown off the park, I think the game in the memory that stuck with me, I forgot about that one. I think most Collingwood supporters would have tried to. But we played a game in 2015 against them where we got blown out of the park by about 40 or 50 points again. But apart from those 2 games, usually very competitive against the Cats. So even more disappointing, Nico.
Let's get underway. We're going to start with Nick. So thank you very much. Before we get back into it, a quick shout out to Revo Fitness, because honestly, $9.69 a week for a gym membership is just ridiculous value. And I feel like more people need to know about it. No lock-in contracts, no hidden fees, just rock up and train. Free weights, cardio, and functional training. It's all there 24/7. So you've got no excuse not to give it a go. I feel like there'd be a lot of players that would have some big egos at the gym Who's one that would like to just trump everyone with just how much they lift?
I reckon maybe not how much they lift, but Scotty Pendlebury. I reckon he still gets it done, Nico. So he might be a shining star down at Revo.
And if you want to go full send, maybe like Pendles, $3 extra a week gets you unlimited Reformer Pilates, massage chairs, and eVolt body scans. $3 extra, that's it. They've got clubs all over the country, so there's likely one near you. Head over to revofitness.com.au, that's revofitness.com.au, or head to your nearest club.
Hey lads, Nico here. Yeah, bit disappointed. Very frustrating night. Typical Collingwood, kick 15-3 one week and 9 goals, 14 the next week. Standard Collingwood. Yeah, clearly poor kicking, goal kicking doesn't help. Defensively we just didn't look great. A couple of players' form is a bit concerning at the moment. I think DC is just looking off the mark at the moment. He might be carrying an injury of some sort. He just doesn't look anywhere near 100% fit, not covering the ground like we know he can. So that's a bit of a concern. I mean, we didn't have much of a ruck opponent to go up against last night, and we just didn't get the job done there. Sidey, I think surely this has to be his last year. I mean, the guy's been an amazing servant, but I think his time is up. And I don't know, I feel as though the back line is more assured and looks better without our captain, Darcy Moore, in the team.
So a couple of points that we've spoken about, but DC was the one we didn't really touch on. Reece Stanley came into that Geelong side, which I found an interesting call. But, he's clearly carrying some injury, and unfortunately we're going to need him against Brodie Grundy this Friday night.
He's another one that probably wasn't mentioned, but certainly seems to be carrying some sort of niggle, a bit like Nick potentially. But he did well to hold up in this match. I just didn't think his influence was anywhere near what it's been in what we've grown to love over the last season or two. But is he due for a spell this week and come back against the Eagles?
I don't think we can rest him this week. If we are a chance to win this match, we need him and Steen up against Brodie Grundy, who's arguably the ruck of the competition right now.
Yeah, I don't think you can rest him this week either, but hard for DC to get involved in this game as well, considering how often the ball was just moving. He thrives on contest and getting himself to the next one and the next one and the next one. And when the ball was ping-ponging around the ground like it was for the Cats, really hard for DC to get himself in the game.
Jakey's up next.
After half time, boys, I just accepted fate, and by the end of the third quarter, that meme with the bloke with his hands in his pocket and he's just kicking rocks on the ground. I was just me waiting for the game to be finished. Like, I actually had to turn the game off with 10 minutes to go. I just couldn't watch the dominance by Geelong. Well, everyone knew that this was going to be a massive game and a hard game. It always is. Whether we get pumped by Geelong or they win the game by apparently getting a fucking touch in front of goal when it clearly wasn't. Like, was it the last game that we played them or the game before that? When Shooter got his goal denied. Yeah. This wasn't our night. Hopefully we can go to the SCG and pump Swans, but even though Swans are at the top of the ladder and SCG is always a hard game, at least we'll have a bit of a break the week after at the G against West Coast. Anyway, boys, you win some, you lose some. This is what it is at the end of the day. On to the next one.
Very cliche filled, that one, but yes.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, but you kind of get the feeling from that, Nico, because it was such a massive game. This was, if we were any hope this year, I know there's a long way to go. The rest of the season, it can change, and I hope it does. But if they needed a reason to come out firing like they did against the Hawks, this was the game. And just to sort of again, another meme, Nico, sort of poking it with a stick, wondering if this thing was on halfway through the third quarter. So very disappointing.
Let's go to Lockie. He's up next. So thank you, Lockie.
Right. I was at the game myself. we looked off it, but we also looked like we didn't care, kind of thing. Like, if we cared for the second half of that game, we would have got ourselves back in it. It's May 9th. We've got 4 months till September. It's a cold night against Geelong at the G. We'll beat them next time. Like, whatever worries there is, I've put my trust in Fly and a majority of the team to figure it out, sort of thing, by the next time we play them. And I think that win will be more important to us. It's the 14 home and away wins, and we get ourselves finals. That's all Fly's thinking about. And last week against the Hawks was a lucky one to get away with 2. Well, lucky to get any points beforehand, but could have got the 4. So now we're just kind of, who really cares? And we'll work it out towards the end of the year, kind of thing. So stress less, Pies. Stress less.
It's a brave thought to have.
Alternative viewpoint, that one.
Don't mind it. Well, opposite to last year where we sort of came out all guns blazing. We're doing the opposite this year. We're going to take it easy at the start of the year and then really turn it on after the bye, maybe, Nico.
I hope you're right, Lockie. That would be great. All right, we'll finish with our 2 regulars here. So we'll start with Irvin.
Good evening, boys. You know what? Actually, take that back. It's not been a very good evening. I've been doing some thinking, and I realized that the first time I ever sent one of these in was after the Carlton game last year, where we'd smacked them by about 60 points, and we were 2 games clear at the top of the ladder, and everything was good. And since I started sending these, we've been a bit of a mixed bag. And I'm a pretty superstitious person, so there seems to be a bit of a correlation between me and my voice and Collingwood just kind of not falling off a cliff, but just declining a bit. And since I'm a superstitious guy, I might have to stop doing these. It's for the good of the team, guys. And look, I appreciate it. I love the work you guys do. It's a fantastic pod. It's my weekly listen, and really appreciate you guys including me every week. But just for the good of the team, I might have to take a little hiatus. Yeah. Actually, you know what? Let's be real. I'm too much of a nuffy to stay away. I'll probably be back next week. But yeah, just a funny thought, because there wasn't much else fun about tonight. But anyways, go Pies.
Nah, don't worry. Irvin's sticking around.
No, look, if we talk about selfless acts,
Yeah.
we would not like to hear from you next week, Irvin, because we want to get the job done against the Swans. But I do kid. But if he thinks there's something there, then I'm all about leaning into the stupid superstitions that come with being a football supporter. So if there's a bit in that, then by all means.
Well, I got told that I was the most superstitious bloke that my friends has ever met on
Really?
Saturday night. So I'm not one to talk, but no, look, Irvin, if there's any reason why I should show up again next week, Nico, is we're sitting here now smiling again. He has a funny way of putting a smile on our face even after a dismal loss. So maybe look at it from a point of view that we need you here, mate, to keep a smile on our face. Otherwise, it would be even more dire than what it usually is.
I'll tell you one man who's not going anywhere anytime
Colin.
soon, and that's Colin.
The man.
So let's finish off with him.
Hi, Pies Nations boys. Colin here. Well, I'm shattered. We played horrible in that first half, but we're only 10 points behind at half time. I thought that Fly would put a rocket up their arse and we'd come out fighting. Now, the stats will show that the contest was even and we had as much, if not more, of the ball than the Cats. What the stats don't show is that we consistently stand 20 metres or so off our opponents. When are we going to properly guard our man? This guarding space is a bullshit idea. Once our direct opponent gets a break, there's no way that we can catch them being so far away. All is well if we turn the board over, then we have unguarded positions, but that didn't happen all that often. Our decision-making and delivery is still a concern. And how bad are we going if that little twerp Henry can kick 4 goals? Geordie, Howie and Pendles tried hard all night, as did Ned McStay and Billy Frampton, and Jack Buller presented well around the ground. I don't know if Nick is ill or injured, but he turned the ball over more than usual. I hope we play a lot closer next week against the Swans, because if we don't, it might get very ugly. Let's make it a better outing this Friday night. Keep up the great work, you guys, and go Pies.
Lovely.
Never mind subs, injecting into three-quarter time in the game, Nico. We need a
Just get in there.
We need a Colin sub at half time or at three-quarter time to give the boys a big rev up, because I'm ready to run through a wall after hearing that. I'm serious. I love it. He's hit the nail on the head, all the talking points that we've been speaking about. Too much space, all the boys trying hard. He makes a great point about the feeling at halftime. We weren't playing that well, but we're only 10 points down. So, you'd think that the coaching staff would get in there at halftime and be like, boys, righto, we're not playing that great. We're going shit house in these areas of the ground, but this is the way we're going to go forward. It just kind of felt like there was none of that, and Geelong overtook us.
How is Ollie Henry, by the way?
Yeah, we're not really commenting.
No.
The bloke plays one good game
That's
a
his
year.
first. No, that's the first time he's actually played all right against us.
I don't. He always just seems to find a way. Like that goal he kicked late in the game last year in a close one when I think it might have been a bit of a Darcy Moore howler that gifted him that one. But he always just bobs up, and this is
Fourth quarter.
the first time where he just sort of actually got a hold of us, and he won't do anything now from now until the rest of the season, or if indeed they play us again. So bugger him.
Well, he wasn't even getting a game for him last year. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that was our SpeakPie. So thank you very much for everyone that got involved. In terms of guest of crowd, Angelique was our winner this week. She couldn't make it, but we wanted to give her a shout out because she was the closest in the end, 80-odd thousand, which was lovely to see on a Saturday night at the MCG. So I'm sure we'll get her on. She also said that she's friends with the famous Colin from SpeakPie.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go. I'm sure we'll get to her at some point soon throughout the year. VFL is what we'll switch to before we wrap here. Marcus, before I get Serge's thoughts from the game, unfortunately, it was a similar result for the VFL boys as it was for the AFL.
It was, Nico. It ended up being played at Vic Park as well with
Good
some
result.
dubious surface conditions down there of late. But unfortunately, we couldn't protect the hallowed turf down there, going down big in this match. Bobby Hill's the obvious talking point, and he had a quiet game. We'll get to him after we've heard from Serge, but overall, just nowhere near it against this Geelong Cats side. And with that, we'll hand it over to the Serge.
Thank you, Nicholas. Round 7 saw the Pies with 14 AFL listed players take on the top-placed Geelong Cats at our spiritual home, Victoria Park. Harry Demeter returning to the Pies lineup. First half played in slippery conditions. The Pies were competitive early, winning the hit-outs and centre clearances, courtesy of Teakle, Smith, Allen, Phillips and Dematia. Pies goal kickers were spread amongst West with 2 goals, Harrison 1, Falkhead 1, Saxena 1. Despite that, the Pies were down 11 points. After half-time, with the sun making an appearance, the Pies disappeared with Geelong just dominating centre clearances, placing the Pies defence under immense pressure. The Pies just couldn't match it with the classy Cats turning the ball over at critical times and unable to get it out of their own defence. The two teams had two different styles, the Cats using handball to break the Pies' lines, whilst the Pies used kicking and handball to try and get it across. But again, turnovers by defenders and the mids just due to poor skill errors were costly. Statistically, after half-time, Pies were inept at the centre clearances and stoppages despite winning the hit-outs. Final scores, Pies 8-7-55 to the Cats, 17-14, 1-1-6. Pies down by 61 points. Highlights, Swaddling performed really well with 29 disposals, as did Demeter, 21. Ryan good in defence again, as were Howes de Bolfo, who continue to play well. West was our only forward with 4 goals from limited opportunities. Draft D watch, Allen had plenty of the ball but turned it over. I've already mentioned Jacob Bryan. Zach McCarthy struggled. Will Parker tried hard. Noah Howes solid in defence. Printable struggled. Demeter okay. And West our only forward. Jay Saxena played really well. Should have kicked 3 goals. And Harrison tried hard, and Smith, as did Smith. Bobby Hill was down today, did not have a great game. Next week, the Pies take on Sydney at 2 p.m. at the Tramway Oval. Go Pies.
Very extensive and very well done again from Serge.
Yeah, Sammy Swaddling looks like he could be a guy to make a debut in the back half of this season, and watched a bit of this match as well. And he's a silky type of mover off half back, loving what he's doing with his disposal when he gets the opportunity, Nico. So he could be another one to keep an eye out for. But let's talk Bobby Hill. We have seen 3 matches in a row now at VFL level. 2 were on restricted minutes. This one he played more game time, but with the 5 disposals, he set Charlie West up with 1 goal. And we now move to an Indigenous round game where I'm not sure if you've caught wind of the story behind the jumper and how the club's lent into what's gone on for Bobby in recent times. I'm just very curious to get your boys' thoughts about how he comes into contention, because there are some whispers that despite him only playing the 3 matches and Fly being very stern about what was going to be required for him to break back into the senior team, does the romance of this round sweep everything else that we've seen from him on the field? Because there's no way known that a player could walk back into the seniors off a 5 disposal game in the VFL. So has he done enough? Has it been long enough to warrant a return to the ones for Bobby Hill?
No. It shouldn't.
Yeah,
No, it really shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're being serious here, and Bobby's got a long time, a long runway before we even think about seeing him back in the senior side. And I think regardless of whether he had a fantastic showing or a poor showing in this match, it is just not enough time to suggest that he should be coming back into this team. He would have an impact when he does come back, I'm sure, but we are not crying out for him to return in this team to be the difference maker. A lot of people spoke about how Will Hayes was stiff to be dropped, and I'd be putting him back into the team before I think about a Bobby Hill. I think
Absolutely.
there is romanticism to it, I'm sure. I think we're doing a lot of that already with Pendlebury, and I don't think we need to add any more to it that we can control. So Bobby will be back when the time is right. I don't want to see him. I'd probably at least another fortnight before we have to bring this conversation up again.
Yeah, I agree. It's a flat no for me. I think you've got to be very cautious to get sucked into the romance of it all, boys. But yeah, I think this time last week, if we had nabbed that Hawthorn game and then gone out and beaten Geelong this week, and the twos went quite well, and Bobby had a good game, I think this would be a much more real conversation, because it was kind of trending in the right direction before this game. However, it's probably we've thrown up the word reality check for our AFL side. It was probably also a bit of a reality check for Bobby Hill at this stage in the season, and a really good insight that despite how good it would be to see him don the Indigenous Guernsey and get involved from an AFL standpoint in that sense on field. I think there's plenty he can do over the course of the next 2 weeks and still have a great impact, but I just don't think he's AFL ready yet, unfortunately.
I concur, and that was my answer too. I just thought it was strange to go through that effort of having a young artist who's a family member, I believe, go to the effort of doing the artwork, and Bobby obviously created the hole that he finds himself in to dig his way back into AFL selection. But it just caught my eye. He was in the press shoots doing the Indigenous jerseys with all the other First Nations players, and I just wanted to ask the question: is there some strange thing we're not aware of? Because on selection integrity, absolutely no chance he played enough footy at twos level, but I just thought it would be an interesting one to watch this week in terms of how it bobs up in media circles.
It's certainly a fair correlation to make. I'd be pretty disappointed to see him back into the team this week.
Far too soon.
We just can't let that be the case. Very extensive VFL report. Well done to everyone involved, especially Serge. Our VFLW team, they're also back to start the year this weekend. They take on the Box Hill Hawks. That game is on Saturday, the 16th of May, 4 or 5 p.m. at Box Hill City Oval. So plenty of Pies action for you throughout the week. Whew, all right. That is a big show, gents, but a very, very good one to get a lot of things off our chest, I think.
Does anyone feel any clearer on the season at hand?
Absolutely not. It's like saying to Nico a bit off air. You never want us to lose at all, but going into this week's game against arguably the best side in the comp at the moment, to go up there and get an honourable 10 to 20 point loss would just sort of infuriate me even more, I feel, because it's, again, you're just not sure where we're at. You know, like had a great game against Hawthorn, bad one against Geelong, and then kind of in touch with one of the top sides. Again, where are we at? I'm kind of sick of this feeling. I'd rather know than not know. Again, look, never want us to lose by more points than less points. But, and look, again, as I said before, could be a famous Collingwood win this week. It seems to be what we do. But just that's what's so frustrating about watching the Pies this week. You go, I said all the time, difference who the best and the worst teams are, very minimal, and you can go to the footy knowing whether you're really good or really bad, you know what you're going to get. At the moment for Collingwood supporters, we're scanning our tickets, going inside the turnstiles, and we have no clue what we're going to get.
Yeah, on probability, I feel like in a fortnight's time after Pendles breaks the games record, we could be in very much the same place because if we go and get done by the Swans and then bounce back against the Eagles, geez, those games against the D's and the Dogs are going to be big for our mid-season review in terms of how we think the rest of the season is going to shape up because right now it is Groundhog Day.
Well, don't turn away. Still listen to our podcast each week. We will bring something different to the table, we promise. Marcus, Jack, thank you, boys.
Thank you, Collingwood.
Thank you, boys. Good to be with you.
Until next week, I've been Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening to or watching the Pies Nation podcast, where the Pies are hot and the drinks are cold. We are thrilled to have the North Texas Devils sponsoring the Pies Nation podcast once again for season 2026, just in time to celebrate their 5th anniversary as a club. They are one of the best clubs to compete in the USAFL and are still on the lookout for new talent for both their male and female programs in the lead up to the new season. Their aim is to have 2 male teams and a female side compete in the Nationals in Florida later this year. They've got a new coach in Brendan Silva, and their main man, Peter Wood, is a passionate Pies man, and it's why it's great to have their support across the campaign. To learn more about the club or register your interest as a player, click the links in our YouTube bio or podcast description and join the Devils today.